Hi, I'm Neil Cowie. I'm a director and financial planner at Robson Laidler Wealth, and I'm joined today by my colleague and wife, Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Cowie. I'm also a chartered financial planner and director at Robson Laidler Wealth. And we're here just to chat through some life journeys, and Neil's just going to explain what the series is going to entail. This is the first one.
Yeah, we wanted to share what we feel are the benefits of financial planning through different life stages, different life journeys, and irrespective of a client's wealth status. We firmly believe that financial planning is something that can benefit all people, and we wanted to set up a series of presentations looking at different life stages and how financial planning and wealth management can interact in those areas. The first stage we're going to look at is a relatively straightforward stage. It's the situation where perhaps a person's just got a new job, maybe still at home with their parents, or maybe just started renting. They might have a surplus income, and they're just looking at what to do, how best to use that surplus income. So we're going to use our financial planning software to demonstrate where the key issues of financial planning might benefit that particular individual. And as I say, we're going to build on this in future episodes and look at different life stages as we go. So the first situation, as I say, is a client. We called him Andy. He's 24 and he has just started work. He's got a salary coming in of £30,000. He's got some expenses. He's got surplus income, and that is the thing that we're going to look at. So I'm just going to share my screen and I'm going to show you our financial planning software and the case that I've set up for Andy. So hopefully you can all see that. This is the input stage of the financial plan. And as I say, we can just look at the various details. So we've got Andy in this example, age 24, £30,000 of annual salary. He's already got some small savings of about £4,000. He isn't yet a member of his employer's pension scheme, but he will have an entitlement to some state pension benefits, assuming that he has sufficient national insurance contributions throughout his working life, and we've assumed what the current maximum state pension will be for Andy. And on the spending side, we assume that he's got some basic spending covering things like utility bills, perhaps rent in his case, or maybe a car payment, or both, just this sort of day-to-day spending of about £14,400. And then on top of that, he's got some discretionary or nice to have spending covering things like weekends, holidays, going out, all that sort of stuff. So pretty straightforward input, and we'll just have a look at the cash flow forecast for that. So this is a graph showing inputs and outputs. Just a couple of things to go through quickly on this. We've got a timeline here. So Andy's 24 now. We've got a timeline going through all the way to age 100. All of Robson Laidler Wealth clients die at age 100. It's quite a convenient age, but joking aside, it's just an assumption about life expectancy, and that's the sort of thing we discuss with a client, whether they've got some health issues or longevity issues. We could adjust that to assumed mortality age. So we've got 100 on this one. A couple of different points on the graph. The light blue line represents Andy's basic spending, so there's essential day-to-day spending that doesn't really change much. The black line, or the difference between the two, represents the additional discretionary spending, and as you can see, there's a surplus all the way through up into an assumed retirement age of 65. It's quite clear from that point that beyond age 65, Andy doesn't have any income, or we're assuming he doesn't have any income, and therefore he's going to have a shortfall. There's a little bit of state pension we've talked about. That kicks in at 68 at the moment for Andy, although that date may be pushed out in future years with longevity demographic issues. But still, there's a shortfall for Andy. So how would we help Andy in this situation? perhaps look at what best to do with the surplus income he has in order to try and either reduce or remove that shortfall, that anticipated shortfall in retirement. Probably two things we would start with, and this is what we would do for all clients really, is firstly establish a monthly budget. It sounds very old-fashioned, but we find it's vital in just trying to work out with each client how much they've got coming in and how much that is going out. And that includes everything. So it's not just the day-to-day stuff, the month-to-month stuff, direct debits and so on. It's the, going for the coffee in the morning on the way into work, or a couple of nights out a month, or whatever it might be. Christmas, exactly. Birthday presents, traveling, the odd weekend away, everything, your hobbies, all that sort of stuff. Home repairs, car insurance, breakdowns, everything that you might spend your money on. I appreciate it's difficult to be absolutely precise about that, but it's important to get a reasonable handle on the total cost of your lifestyle and what income's coming in. Hopefully there's a surplus, and if there is, then there's some ideas as to how best to use that. If there's a shortfall, then that also helps to just identify the spending. Can that be reduced in any way? Can you get a better deal on your utility bills? Very topical at the moment. Can you cut out unnecessary spending? Can you somehow maybe increase your income? Do you have another source of income? Can you have a word with your boss if you feel like you're due a pay rise? All these sort of things can help that situation. So budgeting is the kind of core discipline maybe to start with. The other thing that's just as important is, where is it you want to be? What it is you want your life to look like in both practical terms, but also the financial aspects of that.
And I think it's interesting because, think back to your 24-year-old self, or in my case, we started work at age 16, 17. So thinking back to your 16, 17-year-old self, and it's really difficult to sort of, if somebody asks you the question, well, when do you want to retire? You think, what are they even bothering to ask me that for? It's just ridiculous. So it feels like it's such a long way away, but that's why we feel it's important to just have a bit of an eye on the future and just think I always say to people, if you start to work at say age 20 to age 60, that's only 480 pay slips. And what you do with those pay slips when you're working determines, what your life after work looks like. And again, it's really difficult to get people to think about sacrificing something for later on. That's a tricky one. But hopefully this financial planning software sometimes does, kind of focus the mind a little bit, because you can actually see it. So it's quite important.
So coming back to Andy's situation, there's 4 action points we would suggest to Andy. The first one, again, is quite a basic fundamental one, and that is creating or setting aside an emergency reserve. Typically, we recommend somewhere maybe between 3 and 6 months of spending. It might depend on circumstances, but that's a sort of basic requirement. The point of that is just to cover unforeseen costs that might crop up. You've got a pot of money that you can go to if something crops up, without maybe having to either go into debt or dip into longer term savings or investments. So setting up an emergency reserve, just a common sense, good thing to do. The next thing we might consider for Andy would be some form of protection. He's a single man, he doesn't have any dependents, but he's very dependent on his income to fund his lifestyle. And if something happened to that income, if he was unable to work, for instance, because of an accident or some illness, then it would probably pay him to insure himself, insure his health, to provide a flow of money and income coming in if the worst happened to him, and that would help him sustain maybe just the basics, but at least give him some money coming in. So that, we think, is an important consideration for Andy as a single man.
And what we would say on that is that it's always important to look and see what your employer will do for you. And your employer, if you work for say the NHS or the teachers or the local authority, that sort of thing, you tend to have quite generous sickness benefits. So it'd be worth having a look at your contract just to see what they're offering you. However, in the UK, most private companies don't offer the same level of benefits, so it's worth just looking at what ifs, and whether maybe you could ask your employer to put something like that in place, like a group policy. But if they're not willing to do that, usually when you're at the young end of the scale, it doesn't cost too much to insure against that and to give you some kind of tax efficient income while you're off sick. And actually, this is not meant to scare anybody, but one of the things, if you look on the government website as to what the sickness, what the government levels would be, what they would give you, you might be quite shocked at how low they are. And on that basis, it wouldn't take really very long for you to burn through your savings, which is obviously why it would be good to do something like this, to put something in place.
So once those two fundamentals of an emergency reserve and maybe some income protection are in place, and you can then start addressing what he does with his surplus. There's probably two goals in his case. You might be saving a deposit for a house, to buy a house in the future, and you might want to use some short to medium term investment plan. So something like an ISA or a lifetime ISA, LISA, might be appropriate for him. In his case, probably the LISA. The benefit of that is that it provides a government bonus of 25% of the contribution paid, up to a maximum annual contribution of £4,000. So that might be quite a good way to get a bit of a boost on his savings. So we could have a look at a monthly contribution perhaps to use up some of that surplus. And then the other thing, probably more long term, is if, and they will, his employer offers a workplace pension, and all employers are obliged to offer workplace pensions now and also make a contribution to it. We would recommend 99 out of 100 people join them. There may be reasons not to, but they're very few and far between. So it usually makes very good sense to join your employer's pension. If you think about it, you're getting money for nothing. You are joining a pension scheme and you're getting a contribution from your employer on top of your salary. The downside is you've got to make a contribution yourself, but pensions are an excellent way to accumulate wealth over the longer term. They've got some great tax benefits, and they benefit from effectively compound interest and returns over the years, and that can grow a relatively modest monthly contribution into quite a sizable pot, particularly over the timescale we're looking at for Andy. So that would definitely be a recommendation that Andy joins his workplace pension. So we've got a starting point here, which is what we call the base plan. I've incorporated those action points into what we call the sort of new plan.
I mean, just looking at that plan, Neil, this is a kind of a worst case scenario. This is assuming Andy does absolutely nothing. He just spends all of his, surplus income. He doesn't put anything towards the future, apart from obviously he is hopefully entitled to the UK state pension in the future. But you can see there's a lot of red on that chart, which represents the fact that there's a gap between what he says he likes to spend and what he needs to spend, and actually what is coming in. And that isn't good. We always say red is bad, blue is good. So you want to basically try and eradicate as much as possible the red on that chart. So that's what we're going to show you now. If you just make some small changes.
So as Amanda says, we're just trying to show a before and after situation. Again, similar input screen, nothing much has changed as far as the basic input's concerned. Still got the emergency reserve. You can see we've added an item, lifetime ISA in his case, nothing in it at the moment. We'll add to that. And similarly, workplace pension or work pension, we've included that as well. And also the income protection policy. So we've included some contributions to all those. What does that look like in terms of the cash flow chart we just looked at in the base plan? So immediately you can see there's less red on the screen. We can give some detail to that with some colour. So again, the position between sort of now and retirement is pretty similar. Slightly less of a surplus because we're using some of that to fund investments and savings and protection policies, but still a little bit of a surplus. So it's not as though we're using every single penny. We get to retirement, we've built up an emergency reserve, we've built up some savings so they can be used to supplement income. And then the orange bars represent the value of withdrawals that Andy could make from his pension schemes, workplace pension, to supplement his any other income, so state pension in this example in the navy blue. And you can see that we've reduced the red, the shortfall, and pushed that out way into sort of late 70s, early 80s in Andy's case. Still a bit of work to do, but as a 24-year-old,
we've got time.
60 years down the line, we're not going to be too worried about that at this stage, but a little start to improve his situation. And then we can look at the position, compare both charts together. So again, the starting point at the bottom with lots of red, and then the suggested solution with using some of that surplus income to reduce that shortfall in the future.
It's quite interesting being able to see it, isn't it? I think that does help, because if you don't see it, it's just kind of meaningless. It's like, you know, you get your pension statement every year, whatever. It's just numbers on a page. But actually to see how it can benefit your life going forward, and it can maybe affect the choices that you can make later on. I mean, none of us know how long we're going to be able to work, for instance. So it's just important to, you know, try and make some sensible choices now. And hopefully benefit from them in the future. And I think that's quite evident there, that those small tweaks have just made that change.
So I hope you found that presentation of some value, and perhaps you've looked at it and maybe thought about your own situation. And if there's ways that we could help you, we'd be happy to have a conversation about what we do and how we could potentially help you.
And also how we revisit those plans with clients every year. You know, it's not just like a one-off. We sit down with clients every year and just chat about how their investments are doing, you know, how that's affecting their plan, you know, what in the lifestyle circumstances have changed, you know, perhaps their goals have changed, maybe want to retire a bit earlier, that sort of thing. So that's just the benefit of ongoing financial planning advice. And it kind of keeps you accountable as well, and makes you do something, as opposed to perhaps just pushing it down the road and not really thinking about it.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us today. We look forward to sharing some other ideas in future episodes, but for the time being, thanks again and bye for now.
Bye.